So welcome back, and on this drawing we're going to be looking at some of the things that you may find a little difficult with this one. Is finding where some of the radiuses or the centers of those radius are, or radii I should say. You can see that this one that has a radius of 1, one of those rules is that you need to remember is that these arrows, especially in AutoCAD and all of your other drafting programs, always point back to where the center is. So if you're looking for the center of this one, if you follow this arrow, it will point back to this little plus here. So when I go to create this one, this radius on the outside, I need to reference that center. Everything else on here should be straightforward on how you create everything else. So let's go ahead and switch to AutoCAD and start drafting. Okay, so I'll start with the top view. And I'll start with a circle that has a diameter. Click here, and the diameter of this circle here will be 2. Let's go ahead and put a circle right on the inside of this one. So another circle, center diameter, at this center. It has a diameter of 1.5. This is about as much as I can draw on my top view, but I can use this to keep things in line with the bottom view that I'm going to create, or the front view in this case. So let's go ahead and switch on over and use construction lines, vertical. And let's go ahead and click at each one of these quadrants. Next, I'll create a vertical line just anywhere below this one, but I will try to leave enough space just to remember that, because I have a dimension that I have to put there. So I'm just going to draw a line going right across this, and I want it to be horizontal. So make sure you turn your ortho on. Click here and place it. The total height of this is 2.5, so you can either use offset or copy. In this case, I'll just offset, type in my distance, which is 2.5, select this line, and then click below it. Alright, let's go ahead and trim these lines off at the top, and then trim these little parts here on the side. So I'll use trim, and I'll go right across here. I'll trim across here. I'm going to trim right across these two lines, and then I'll trim over here on these two lines. The lines at the very top, let's go ahead and delete those. Now it doesn't tell me where the bottom of this cup is, but if you assume that it's 0.25, that's safe enough to assume in this case. So I'm just going to offset a distance of 0.25. This line going up. Okay. So now that I have everything, or the walls that I need to create my cup. So next, let's start going ahead and building our handle. So I'm going to start with the first circle that has a radius of 2, and that circle is located right along this line, and it's going up a height of 1.75. So I'll start with a circle, center radius. I'm going to touch this endpoint, and you can see I'm going to kind of go away from it to where I get the tracking above it. I'll type in 1.75, and now it's asking me what's the radius I want to put in this circle. The radius is 1. Now you'll notice that this is the inside radius of that. The thickness of my handle is 0.25. I'll go ahead and put the other one on the inside of here, and then we'll go ahead and do our offsets. Next, let's go ahead and create another circle that has a radius. And this one will be located 0.5 this direction, and then also going up that same 1.75. So I'll shift and right click and choose the from option. I'll click on this endpoint. Now you have to type in the @ symbol. I'm going to the left on the x-axis, so that's negative 0.5, comma, and I want to go up 1.75. This circle here has a radius of 0.5. Okay, now I have both of my circles drawing. I'll go ahead and do the offset. So I'll choose offset, type in my distance, which is 0.25. This smaller circle I'm going to offset to the inside, and this bigger circle here I'm going to offset to the outside. Let's go ahead and create some more lines here just to complete this. So I'll create a couple of horizontal lines going from these quadrants. So I'll draw a line from this quadrant going to here, and the other one going from this quadrant to here. The rest I have to do to complete my handle part is just trimming. So let's go to trim, and then we'll start with this arc. And I know that both of these arcs are going to start at the bottom of my handle. Next, let's deal with the inside portion. So I'll trim this one around this direction. Until I get to that point here. Let's go ahead and trim this part off. And now we can finally trim that part of our handle off. Let's go ahead and take care of our gaps in between here. Okay, so that's the major part of creating the cup and the handle. Okay, so all of my radii that are on the inside here, and even the ones here, they're not listed. But there's a general note that says that these are 0.125. So let's go ahead and fillet those. So fillet, radius, 0.125. And once I do have more than one, so select the multiple option. I select between here and here. And I'm just going to continue these around. Okay, so continuing our fillets. Even the ones on the inside of the cup. Okay, so now that we have this bottom portion completed, let's go ahead and put our chamfer on. So I'll use the chamfer command. Set my distance, 0.125. And then the second distance is going to be the same. So you can hit enter. And I do have more than one, so I'll select multiple. And I'll put a chamfer between these two lines. Let's go ahead and complete this one by drawing a line right across to show that edge. And next, I have a hidden circle that's going around on my top view. Well, that hidden view happens to be this edge that's along the bottom here. There's a couple of different ways to create that, but just to show you what that circle is, I'll go ahead and create a construction line, vertical, and I can pick either one of these endpoints I want. I'll start with that one. Let's go ahead and create a circle with a radius. Go to the center, click here, and then go to this perpendicular. Let's go ahead and erase that line. And now let's complete the portions that are on our handle. So I'll go back to construction line, vertical. What I'm going to do is I'm going to choose this endpoint, this endpoint, escape. And now I'll come up and do the other portion on this one. So I'll go back to the construction line, horizontal, and I can either choose this quadrant or this center point. I'll just choose the quadrant. Let's go ahead and offset this. We know the thickness of our handle, so let's use offset. 0.25 is the distance. Select the line that you just created. Offset one to the top and one to the bottom. Okay. So now we're ready to start filleting this portion. So let's go to fillet, radius, and it still should be set to 0.125 since I haven't changed it. I'm just verifying it. You can hit enter if it's still set to that, and then choose multiple. Okay, so the way that I'm going to start this is that I'm going to fillet, and you have to pick the part of the line that you want to keep. So I want to keep this side first, so I'm going to select this line and that line. This line going to this line. Next I'll select this line, and I want to go to this part of the circle, and I'll do the same on the other side. So I'll select this line and then the outside part of the circle here. Next I'll select this line with this line, and then finally this line back to this line. Okay, escape out of the command, and then let's go ahead and delete that middle line there. Now we have our cup created. We're ready to insert it in our title block. So let's use the classic insert command. I'll browse to where I keep my A-size title block. I'm going to make sure all of this is unchecked and select OK. Now if I zoom the extents, we should see our title block. Go ahead and move this to the inside of your title block. So I'll just use the move command. Select a base point, and I can turn ortho off and put it on the inside of my title block. I'll zoom extents again, and I'm kind of looking at my drawing and seeing if I have enough room to complete all of my dimensions. And in this case I do, so that tells me what my title block will be. So I'll select the title block, right click, choose properties. Everything is fine with the scale X, scale Y, and scale Z. In the attributes, go ahead and fill in your name. The project for this one will be, let's just call it a mug. And then the scale on this one is going to be 1 equals 1, since we did not adjust our title block. The next step I usually would do would be to adjust my line type scale, but the line type scale is already set to 1, so I don't have to worry about this step. Okay, so the next thing I have to do is go and put in my center lines. So the first thing I do before I do my center lines is use the center layer command and set its value equal to center. Next thing I need to do is decide if this is a metric or an imperial units, and in this case we're using regular inches and feet, so we don't have to adjust the extension of our center marks. Okay, let's go ahead and start putting in our center lines and center marks. I'll start with a center mark. I'll place it around that object. I have a center line running through this object, so I'll select this line and this line. I want this line to extend beyond this one, so select it, select the square, and put it at that midpoint. I'll let AutoCAD go ahead and put the centers on my two smaller arcs this time. Let's go ahead and put our hidden lines on the correct layer as well. So I know that these lines on the inside need to be hidden, so I'm going to select them. In my properties box, I'm just going to choose the drop down, and I'll choose hidden. Escape, and then I'll select this ring on the inside, and I'll also make that on the hidden layer. Okay, everything is on the correct layer. All of our center marks and center lines are in. Let's go ahead and set up our dimension style. So before I do my dimension style, I'll go ahead and adjust my dimensions to automatically be set to the dimension layer. Next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and adjust the dimension style. I'll select this arrow, or you can type D, enter. It'll bring up the same dialog box. Let's go ahead and modify this one. I always like to start with the Lines tab, and then that way I can walk my way through. So if I baseline dimensions and things of that nature I need to adjust, I can adjust it from here. Everything is fine. In this case, I'm going to let AutoCAD put these little pluses in for us. So I'm going to leave it to mark on the center marks. Underneath the text height, this is 0.125. The Fit tab, this is the same as my title block. In this case, we did not adjust it, so you can leave that set to 1. Primary units. All of ours are decimal with 2 decimal places. And we do see the leading zeros, so we're not going to do any suppression on the leading or trailing zeros. Select OK, then close. I start putting our dimensions on. So I'll choose linear dimension first. Well, before I do the linear, let's do the radius dimensions. That way I can go ahead and get the pluses on. So I'll choose radius dimension. Select this arc. And you can see that that plus will appear. I'll go ahead and place my dimension here. Let's go ahead and do the radius dimension on the outside arc of this one. And now I have the plus for that one. Now when I set my linear dimensions, I have something I can dimension to. So from this endpoint to that endpoint is where I'll specify my linear dimension for that one. Choose linear dimension again. I'll go from this bottom endpoint up to that endpoint, and I'll place that dimension. I'll keep placing my linear dimensions along here. I have another linear dimension along the top. A linear dimension along this point, so it's at that end point and that end point. And then I have a diameter dimension that's on the inside portion of here. For my dimension that's going across here, I used a line dimension, and I'll select a point, and this midpoint is fine. Come across to where it perpendiculars, do another left click, and now I'm going to place that dimension right at this location here. So I'm trying to keep it right on that end point. Escape out of the command, select this dimension, and then you can turn these two extension lines off. So I'm looking for extension line 1 and 2. I'll turn them off, and it just cleans up your drawing a little bit. So you can see now that I don't have those lines showing up. For the dimension along the bottom here, this is going to be created with a leader. You have two options here. You can set up a multi-leader. In this case, I'm just going to use a quick leader since I'm not creating a lot of them. I'll type in QL, and that's the shortcut for quick leader. I'll take a look at my settings. Inside of the settings, I want M text, so that is correct. Underneath my lines and arrows, I want my leader line to be straight. 3 of them is fine. If you want to put any kind of constraints to your segments, you can do that. Sometimes I do that just to make sure that all of my leader lines are going at the same angle. So I may use one like 15 or 45. In this case, I'm gonna leave it set at any. And then the attachment. I always like these two to be set to the middle of the top line. Select OK. And now I'm ready to create my leader. I'll select this midpoint, come down this direction, do a left click here. And now if I hit the enter button, it's going to ask me what's the text width. So it's asking me how long am I projecting my text width to be. I'll just let that be 0 just by hitting the enter button. Now it's ready to start typing. So if I type in the 1.25 x 1.25, enter, and then hit enter one more time, it will place your dimension, and it's also going to put the landing for you. I want this to match this one since they're both dimensions. I'll go back to the Home tab, choose Match Properties, select the dimension, and then select the dimension I want it to copy like. Also, make sure you select the leader. Okay, let's zoom out of this one. So everything on this one should be complete. Just make sure you fill in your name. And this one was a little bit interesting, but a simple drawing. I want to thank you for watching.